Hope. Emily Dickinson tells us it is the thing with feathers. That was poem 314 in the Emily Dickinson canon. We have here today poem 756. And it seems Emily Dickinson may have never abandoned that thought process, that conclusion, and built on it as she went. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we're here for another poetry discussion, a poetry discussion that comes to us from Emily Dickinson, and in as much this will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, number two being the Emily Dickinson playlist, a playlist of videos dedicated exclusively to the greatest poet of all time. Today's poem, I many times thought peace had come, and it reads as such. I many times thought peace had come when peace was far away. As wrecked men deem they sight the land at center of the sea, and struggle slacker but to prove as hopelessly as I, how many the fictitious shores before the harbor be. Now, if you are willing to accept a sort of generalized interpretation for this poem, people will say, you will find criticism that says people will sort of gesture towards this poem being about the Civil War, and perhaps they have some further foundation for that assessment than simply the poem itself. However, in the poem itself, I don't think we really have any reason to believe that is the case, no matter when it was written. This, in my estimation, is a personal poem, not a poem written about some larger or extraneous idea, some extraneous uh, conflict. I think that this is about an internal conflict, and because of that, we have to ask the question, why does it do this? Peace. What does peace mean? Peace to whom? Peace for whom? Peace from what? Peace. What does this mean? If we are accepting the Civil War interpretation of this poem, it would be the ceasefire between the North and the South in the United States. However, if we are talking on a personal level, if we're talking about an individualistic struggle, peace can mean any number of things. Peace, very vague. I think sometimes the gifts and curses that are laid upon us at birth or by happenstance through biology, wherever they come from, are twofold. In fact, they're twain. In fact, maybe they're just one. One of the things that I've heard Elon Musk say, and whatever you think about Elon Musk, you have to admit that guy's got some stuff going on in his brain. He says he doesn't think people would want to be him. And prompted to go on further, he says that his mind is always on fire. I don't know if he used the phrase on fire, but it was something close to that. Something that would give you the idea, the impression that he felt his mind was always aflame. But on the opposite end of things, to be so dull that your mind was at peace, he wouldn't be the richest man in the world. Here we have our speaker saying, I many times thought peace had come when peace was far away. I many times thought peace had come. What peace? Whatever peace, it was actually far away. In my interpretation of this poem, this is a personal struggle. The piece in question could be any number of things on a personal level for your interpretation, for you to take this poem and make it part of yourself, which is important. That's what poetry is. That's how literature affects all of us. That is the most important part of literature that I think sometimes we lose sight of. That it has to be important to you. So that interpretation has to be something that you, with which you identify. But if I were to conjecture on this poem, it would seem to me that it is something like that quote from Elon Musk, that his mind is always aflame. Emily Dickinson left us 1,775 poems. It's a number that I talk about a lot because it sure is impressive. And there is something in every one of those poems that is worth taking with you. Her mind had to have been aflame, aflutter, had to have been just an absolute war zone of ideas. Had to have been. So, to have many times thought peace had come when peace was far away suggests that struggling with that mind that was capable of writing 1,775 poems of absolute, incredible insight to the human experience, that mind did not feel at peace. And we are told, and I struggle, and struggle slacker, but to prove as hopelessly as I, how many the fictitious shores before the harbor be. Our speaker is saying that, yeah, no, it looks like the shore because you were so desperate for the shore when you were stranded in the middle of the sea, that any strange contour in the water looks like land to you. It is not so. A mind as active as Emily Dickinson's, as creative as Emily Dickinson's, as genius as Emily Dickinson's, would feel like a struggle. But on the opposite end of that, Emily Dickinson, now a little bit differently than Elon Musk, Emily Dickinson did not die as the richest person in the world. Maybe Elon Musk won't either, but Emily Dickinson lived basically in obscurity from a high profile family, but lived herself mainly in obscurity. So she did not have the great reward of this mind, just the work to go along with it. So, what would it mean to have thought, as I'm just sort of throwing out there, Emily Dickinson would have, that that peace had come, that her mind would be still, that she felt some type of comfort as herself, that she, what? That she what? All of us have some struggle like this. But that gift that makes us who we are and the misfortune that makes us who we are the opposite sides of the same coin. Emily Dickinson seems to have struggled with the extreme individuality of her personality. Extreme individuality. Rugged individualism is what the Americans are known for. Emily Dickinson took that to the extreme. But without that individualism, who would she have been? I think it's a fair question. Whatever it is that we struggle with in our lives, so a lot of exceptional people have very bad childhoods. A lot of exceptional people come from abusive households. A lot of exceptional people come from broken homes. Ask them, would they trade that? Because I think a lot of them believe that part of what makes them who they are is that struggle with that thing. Did they not know their own resilience because of their troubled childhood? They would not have been able to struggle through when Elon Musk's rockets were blowing up and the factories weren't churning out cars at a profitable rate. When Emily Dickinson gave up the prospect of publication, the prospect of notoriety, gave it up. What would have kept her writing if she hadn't had these other struggles in her life? And so the examples are numerous. Basically, anyone from history that you want to pluck that was not a politician or a king had these struggles. And even them, right? They would have had, many of them would have had, especially the kings, right? The royalty, and not just kings, queens, etc., would have been from stressful households, but they would have been more comfortable in other ways. Leonardo, for example. Leonardo was a bastard child. His father would not claim him. Probably it's the only reason that his father would not claim him that he was allowed to pursue painting. Someone of his father's esteem would not have been allowed to go into that type of work, that type of study, that type of craft. But because his father would not claim him, he was allowed to pursue something that was quote unquote lesser. Do you think, and so that put a chip on his shoulder, do you think at any time Leonardo would have, I think his father was like an accountant, something like that? Do you think Leonardo would have been okay trading that, trading his art, trading his engineering mind, and saying, okay, I'll just be an accountant? Nothing wrong with being an accountant. It's not Leonardo da Vinci. How many accountants are hanging in the Louvre? This poem makes me think of that because I think that it is the great misfortune of our poet here, maybe not our speaker. We don't know of what it is that our speaker is talking, but we do know that our poet was an extreme individual with extreme insights and an incredible work ethic. Would not have been recognized in her day as an incredible work ethic because she wore white and lived in the attic. But all this time later, we have the proof. We have the proof positive that that work ethic was unfailing. And that's just the work that we have. I often wonder how many notes or ideas she had jotted down and lost. How many ideas, how many poems she had almost had and couldn't find where she put that paper. Right? Something like that, lost in her mind because she couldn't jot it in her cell phone on the walk back from church, but she would not have had the pen and paper with her, the desk with her. Anyway, that's what I have for this poetry discussion. I many times thought Peace Had Come by Emily Dickinson. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.